I made this guitar with about $500 worth of materials. Well, sort of. I only spent $500 of my own money within the past few months to make it. In actuality, if you included all the tools I've gathered over the many years, I realistically spent almost 60 times more than that. So, how much is this guitar really worth? I guess it all starts here with this walnut top I made a while back. A guy from a sawmill in Ohio called Christ Sawmill reached out to me and said he'd like to make a trade for some of my guitar making templates in exchange for some cool lumber he had laying around. I agreed, and this was part of what he sent to me. It's mostly ingrain, and I book matched it, then filled it with black epoxy to preserve its live edge features. I used about $30 worth of epoxy, and the wood was trade, so we won't even count that. Woodworking is one of those things that feels like a money saver. You look at a nice table or a guitar or whatever and think, I could make that for way cheaper. And technically, yeah, you can. All you need is a few hundred hours of practice, a small mountain of tools you'll only use once, and the ability to keep your sanity when the thing you built warps like a potato chip 2 weeks later. It's a total bargain. And that's the part nobody talks about, the time. Learning to design something that doesn't look like it belongs in a middle school shop class project. Learning how wood actually moves and behaves. And then learning how to fix it after you screw it up. That's the real cost. You'll see at the top right, a sort of tracker on tool costs. Let me start by saying, I'm not well off financially by any means. I've acquired all of my tools over the many years of either saving up, grossly and immaturely splurging money I didn't really have, or being blessed enough for sponsors or other YouTubers to gift me things. This leads me to think, no matter how much I spend or collect in tools, I don't think it really adds value to the guitar. Big companies like PRS, Fender, and Gibson all have tools that cost well over $100,000, and they can keep costs lower due to efficiency and buying materials at wholesale. In actuality, I could spend all of my money for the next 10 years designing a guitar, and if it looks or sounds like trash, it's not really worth it. So is it solely the sound output and overall design that gives a guitar value? I see some boutique makers selling guitars for tens of thousands of dollars. And I'm curious, if you had the money today, no strings attached, what would be the type of guitar you'd spend a shitload of money on? Better yet, what would you consider a shitload of money for a guitar? If you've been paying attention, this African mahogany body was fully chambered to lower the overall weight before inlaying the top. I cracked the top by making the inlay too large in the beginning. The pressure caused a snap across the epoxy, but luckily enough, some thin CA glue bonded it back together, and you'll see later the damage is completely invisible. Sean and I chose red epoxy for one main reason. From the very beginning, we knew we were going to name this guitar the Blood Moon Mesa. The initial concept came from the walnut against the black epoxy. It looks like a mesa underneath a black desert sky. As quasi-homeless best friends, we've spent many years traveling and camping across desert and mountain landscapes with a little more than a vehicle, instant coffee, and ramen noodles. In fact, together we have about 50,000 miles of road trips through the West under our belt. Now all of that, coupled with the fact that we've attempted multiple business ideas that inevitably failed due to our lack of understanding business, led us to where we are today, making the very first guitar available for purchase under our brand, Scarlett Guitars. If you've been following my channel for a while, you know we've been giving away guitars and doing anything necessary to grow the brand name. Shortly after Sean officiated my wedding with my lovely wife, Brooke, we started planning out this long-term goal to sell our creations. This is why I keep blabbing about the value of a guitar. It's the final piece of the puzzle. What do we price these things at, and how do we determine that value? Blood Moon Mesa will actually be the first of 4 in our launch titled the Frontier Series. Don't worry, we'll still do giveaways as well, but the Frontier Series, as you'll see with this guitar, will have the most detail and design time brought into them. With all the time traveling throughout the West, along with this being the first launch of Scarlett guitars, the Frontier series seems to be the perfect name to set off what we hope to be the first of many future launches. Okay, so why stain this beautiful wood? Honestly, I don't know what I was thinking. I thought black would really help contrast with the red, but I later decided it wasn't nearly as important as maintaining the natural wood look that I've started to become known for. Instead, this black stain will act as a grain filler as most of it will be sanded back, leaving the body just slightly tinted. I'll say this once, I've used multiple coats of oil, then hard wax oil, sanded in even more hard wax oil up to 3000 grit, then applied multiple layers of a nano ceramic coating. It's clean and protected. Anyways, a name like the Frontier series, especially being based on a western, desert, and mountainous theme, means these guitars need to have a bit of a polished grit to their look. Nice enough for a jazzy showroom, gritty enough for a one-man show at an 1800s saloon. So far, the body seems to be achieving that. The chambered body, chamfered edges, classic F-hole design along with the natural wood look, all combine into something I was really starting to find pleasing to look at. What's really daunting is finding the right neck for this, but we'll get to that in just a bit. So far, realistically, I've only spent a couple $100s on materials. Some I've had laying around the shop for a while, and others I bought outright. Which brings me to a point I'd like to make. No, you don't need all these tools to make a guitar, but I definitely do. I'm not a hand tool genius, nor do I have the patience for that. My last video generated some serious heat and hatred from people claiming to be true luthiers and were mad that the video was getting attention. I'll admit it, I'm nothing without my tools when it comes to making stuff. I specifically built my skill set and process around the tools that I have. Some people just get so angry when you don't build an entire guitar with a single chisel, fingernails, and a hammer. Now for the neck. This Pale Moon Ebony was going to be trashed by another luthier online, so I gave him like $150 for it. Certain parts were full of checks, cracks, and pits, and definitely needed to be stabilized with black epoxy. One man's trash truly can be another man's treasure, as long as that other man, or lady, is willing to do what's necessary to salvage it and make it workable. The color and grain pattern in Pale Moon Ebony is so wild. I didn't want to take away from it by making the fretboard a different material. Instead, I wanted to make it look like one solid piece, but done delicately, of course. Making this neck was going to be done by a combination of the CNC, regular power tools, and some handwork. I wanted to salvage as many cutoffs as possible because they make great inlays and accent pieces for future guitars. Speaking of future guitars, as I mentioned earlier, the Frontier series will have 3 more guitars that accompany this one. Their names are Outrider, Deadwood, and Full Moon Mesa. These guitars will be serial numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. Let me know if you think one of them should be a bass as well. And don't worry, we still plan to do future guitar giveaways. So, if you feel like any of that is something you'd love to be a part of and see, I hope I've done enough to earn your subscription at this point. I work hard on these videos, from the money invested to long trips to lighting, editing, and obviously designing and building guitars. All in the hopes that the wonderful people on the other side of YouTube will enjoy it. If making guitars seems like something you'd like to do in the future as well, check out my website where I have a bunch of different guitar making templates and SVG files to get started on making your very own first guitar. Further, if guitar building seems intimidating to you, I have a free download that lists components of different guitars, specialized tools that help, and basically how to build one without a CNC. I'll leave a link to all of that down in the description. To go along with the red of a Blood Moon theme, I'm using Padauk wood as fretboard inlays. The 12th fret has a blood moon along with cloud-like structures encircled by a sort of compass ring thing. It kind of goes along with the Frontier mindset, finding your own way through the desert. As an additional measure of detail, I'm sandwiching in a layer of black veneer between the fretboard and the neck. It will create a thin black line around its entirety and raise the fretboard up because I made it a bit thin first. I'm hoping by now you can kind of see where I'm going with this. There's still a ton of work left to do, but the idea is taking shape. My end goal is something that feels traditional but also different from anything you've ever seen before, other than maybe from my past builds. The density and thickness of this neck should prove to add quite a bit of sustain to each note, opening up more variations of playability. And quick side note, clamps can get really expensive. While I'm carving out this neck, let me tell you a little bedtime story. Except, instead of tucking you in, it'll probably make you rethink camping forever. So, it's circa 2016. Sean and I decide that driving from St. Louis to the Grand Canyon and then to Yellowstone over a couple of days was a reasonable plan. By the time we roll into Yellowstone, it's late. Like, the shadows of bison look like demons in the mist late. And it's April, which apparently means Siberia cold. We finally find this little valley surrounded by foothills and giant trees. Perfect spot to pitch a tent, right? Except it was a public picnic area, which we found out later. But hey, ignorance is bliss when you're freezing. We broke a couple dozen federal rules, lit a fire, made some coffee at midnight, and thought, yeah, this is camping. That's when the rustling started. Now, most normal people would ignore it and sip their coffee. But Sean's dumbass hears a faint howl like a coyote that's smoked for 30 years and thinks, hey, I should howl back. So he does. And immediately the forest responds. Multiple howls, long, guttural, bone-rattling howls. The kind of sound that makes you remember every horror movie where the idiot dies first. We grab our little handheld spotlights, go back to back like we're in a budget action movie, and start spinning in circles, scanning the trees. After 2 minutes of this dizzy light show, something moves. Out of the northern foothill, about 40 yards away, steps this unit of a wolf. It's kind of black and gray, big ass muscles, staring at us like we're the late night snack. And that's when it clicks. It's not coyotes, it's wolves. Yellowstone wolves. One of the packs that literally keep bison on their toes. Now, their survival instinct in movies says run. Ours said take tiny baby step backwards to the car, but keep the horror movie stare going. So that's what we did, creeping away like two synchronized idiots while the wolf occasionally shuffled forward like it was just curious how long we'd last. We finally make it to the car, slam the doors, and then lock them, because that'll definitely stop a wolf the size of a horse. And we sat there watching it melt back into the darkness while our illegal campfire fizzled out. We didn't even pretend to camp after that. We slept in the car, two grown-ass men wrapped in fear and coffee jitters. The next morning, we confessed everything to a park ranger who confirmed, 1, yes, a wolf pack was in the area that night, 2, yes, we camped in a picnic area, and 3, yes, we're idiots. True story. Anyways, as we move through each one of the Frontier series builds, I'll share one of our many stories like this, like the time my dogs chased wild javelinas through the Gila National Forest, not knowing how violent a javelin could be. Okay, back to the neck. Nothing really feels better than getting the neck shaped, other than adding finish, installing hardware, and playing it for the first time. Like I said, this Ebony had tons of character flaws that I had to fix going along the way, so it was even more rewarding to see it come to life. Choosing the right fret wire is crucial when it comes to player preference and playability, but even more so with design. That's why I went with the gold Evo frets instead of stainless steel. They may not be as wear resistant as stainless steel, but the trade-off is this gorgeous gold color that will accent the natural wood look of this guitar. Just check out how it polishes up. I got the neck glued in off camera, and we finally got to reveal what this ebony looks like with finish on it. To you, it's only been like 15 minutes, but this is actually a little over a month's work if you include design time, sanding, and a massive hip surgery I had to stop everything to get. I'm only 34 years old and getting hip surgery. I swear, as soon as my son was born, I aged like 50 years. We're almost there, but there are just a couple more things to put the cherry on top of this guitar. Starting with all these solid brass components. I got a wild hair up my ass and thought I'd try to machine brass for the very first time on this extremely important project. The idea was to have solid brass pickup rings, a brass string ferrule bar, and a brass serial number bar. It ties everything together with the gold frets and just feels way higher quality than the cheap plastic ones on all the big name guitars. Apparently, brass is also better for tone. If anything, it'll definitely help with the noise reduction if grounded properly. The other cool thing about doing it this way is that I get to design all of my own shapes. The pickup rings really stand out with their own unique shapes. I also had the last minute idea to carve out Blood Moon Mesa on the string ferrule bar because this, along with all my other guitars in this series, truly are one of one. You can get close to copying them, but the uniqueness in the wood grain makes it impossible. Mother Nature really does all of the hard work here. I may or may not have broken 5 pricey end mills trying to get my feed and speed rates down, but it all worked out eventually. After they were all cut, they took a quick bath in mineral oil and then took a couple coats of a hard wax oil. If properly cared for, rather than rust, they should get a nice patina over the years but still maintain that brushed metal look. The final cherry on top is the truss rod cover. Using different types of wood and CA glue, I designed this to have a blood moon rising over a desert horizon behind a mesa. I used butternut wood for the mesa, African mahogany for the landscape, and padauk for the moon. Black CA glue was the easiest to make the night sky, and I sprinkled some brass shavings in it to act as realistic but faint looking stars. Grain direction was important here too. The butternut's figure and proper grain orientation really gives it a 3-dimensional effect. This is probably the most delicate design I've ever attempted, but in the end, definitely solidified this guitar's name as the Blood Moon Mesa. Super cool. If you remember, I said I wanted to keep as many cutoffs of the ebony as possible because it would make great accent pieces. To tie in the back of the guitar to the neck, I made the electronics cavities covers out of it. Just one additional nod to detail and congruency topped off with the brass Scarlett Guitars logo. Everyone knows things look way fancier if you wear black gloves and unnecessarily use tweezers to pick up tiny objects like screws. I feel like I'm shooting a Shane Company Diamonds commercial. Haven't even wiped all the dust off it yet and thought it was a good idea for some reason. I definitely wasn't going to refilm it though. That would be twice as ridiculous. Instead, we'll play some elevator music and lean into it. If you made it this far and have been paying attention to the cost tracker, just remember, I've purchased these things on a minimal budget over many years. I also haven't included a bunch of other tools that I haven't filmed but used in the making of this guitar. Like this lathe, it's perfect to turn matching walnut knobs to tie into the top. I'm not safe with it at all though, so don't copy me. Some other honorable mentions would be the jointer, planer, laser for my templates, and all of the other ongoing materials like sandpaper and finishes. Then you get into labor. I put in about 80 to 85% of the 200 hours that went into designing and making this guitar. At $35 an hour, that equates to about $7,000. So, that leads to my final question. What do you think this guitar is worth?